Book readings with Miss Bernard. Hello and welcome to day 18 of our Black History Month series. Today's story is Call Me Miss Hamilton, One Woman's Case for Equality and Respect. Written by Carole Boston Weatherford. Illustrated by Jeffery Boston Weatherford. What's great about this book is that the illustrator is the author's son. Let's begin. This miss first answered to Mary, the name that her parents, Robert and Elizabeth Hamilton, gave her in 1935. Her name on their lips was music to her ears. Like her biblical namesake, Mary, the mother of Jesus, little Mary had a spirit within her. It was a fighting spirit. Mary's parents raised her to know right from wrong. In Catholic school, Mary admired her teachers, though those nuns were tough and brave. For a while, Mary wanted to be a nun, to be called sister. But she would find other ways to bring about change. She also knew black from white. Though African American, Mary's skin was so light she could have been mistaken for white. Some of her relatives did pass for white, but not Mary. She was proud to be black. Mary's family lived out west, where some states had outlawed segregation. But African Americans were still barred from many places where white people could visit and shop and dine, as were so-called Indians and Mexicans. After high school, Mary went east to college. The all-girls school stressed scholarship, manners, and charm. At receptions and teas, addressing others by proper titles, Miss, Mrs., or Mr., was a sign of courtesy and respect. After college, she taught school in New York, but her classroom was not her only concern. Mary cared about equal justice. She cared about the civil rights movement. For her, the movement meant that black people were finally fighting back. In 1960, she joined that fight as a member of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. Mary went on freedom rides. Busloads of black and white people from the North risked their lives to test a new court ruling that outlawed segregation on interstate buses and railroads. Could black passengers really sit where they pleased? Was the law worth the paper it was printed on? Down south, the Freedom Riders' courage was tested. They saw the color line with their own eyes. In town after town, colored drinking fountains, restrooms, waiting rooms, and entrances, and whites-only restaurants, hotels, theaters, parks, and swimming pools. Sometimes the protesters couldn't believe their ears. Without so much as a second thought, whites called African Americans out of their names, addressing grown men as boy and women as girl or auntie, rather than Miss, Mrs., or Mr. And African Americans were expected to answer. Hecklers called the protesters even worse names too hateful to print. In 1961, Mary was arrested in Mississippi. In her mugshot, the sign around her neck bears no name, only a number, 21068. Again and again, Mary was arrested. She told one jailer who threatened to harm her that she'd fight as if her life depended on it. When another jailer trapped her in an elevator, she refused to scream, just for spite. Despite beatings, she kept resisting, relying on non-violence to press for justice and equality. In the civil rights movement, Mary was known for her fiery spirit. That's why Martin Luther King Jr. gave her the nickname Red. Her strong convictions led to her becoming the first woman to head CORE's southern region. Pledged to nonviolence, Mary could not stomach unfairness or disrespect. In Tennessee, Mary was arrested again, this time for picketing a theater that made black moviegoers sit in the balcony. When the mayor came to the jail and called her Mary, she demanded that he call her Miss Hamilton. "If you don't know how to speak to a lady," she said, "then get out of my cell." That wasn't the only time Mary was treated like she was a second class due to her skin color. In an Alabama court, a white prosecutor called her by her first name. Mary refused to answer unless he called her Miss Hamilton. The judge ordered her to respond. Mary refused again. The judge charged her with contempt of court and threw her in jail. 5 days later, she got out and refused to pay the $50 fine. Mary had news for that judge. She was not afraid to fight in court for what's right. With NAACP lawyers on her side, she fought the contempt charge all the way to the United States Supreme Court. In 1964, the highest court of the land ruled in Mary's favor, deciding that everyone in court deserved respect. Miss Hamilton had won. From then on, judges and lawyers addressed all African Americans in court as Miss, Mrs., or Mr., the same as whites. All because of the Miss Mary case. Whew, the end. Whew, she demanded respect. And it wasn't easy. She was thrown in jail many times, but in the end, she won and she made a change for us all. All right. In the back of the book, there's a timeline of her life showing important dates. All right. This has been a lovely, lovely, lovely book today for our Black History Month series. Be sure to come back tomorrow for day 19 of our Black History Month series. All right. And remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification button so that you are notified every time I post a new story. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye-bye.